Joined now by SABC News international editor Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, good afternoon. Let's start with the developments around the junta leader in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore. Lots of marches being held across the continent in various countries in support of him. Please place those into context for me and how they unfolded.
Well, I think people are aware that after that coup in Burkina Faso, he became the leader of that country. And since then, there has been attempts to remove him from office because Burkina Faso, you'd have people who are not supporting him, and most of those people are outside the country. We know that there has been an attempt by ECOWAS also, you'd recall, after that coup to unleash the military in those three countries in the Sahel region, particularly during the coup in Niger. You'd recall that threat that ECOWAS will send troops so that they can bring back the president who was removed from power by the military. And therefore, there has been hostility between the three Sahel countries. I'm talking about Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali against the ECOWAS, the regional organization. And therefore, the countries themselves are trying to communicate directly with people around the world, particularly on the continent. And it looks like Traore's strategy with these people has kind of bear fruits in terms of being able to gain traction outside Burkina Faso, on the continent, in different parts of the world, including America. You talk Brussels, you talk London, and also in Jamaica, where he is enjoying some support. And therefore, we saw those coordinated protests in different parts of the world where people were expressing their support to the current leader of Burkina Faso. And I think because the statements he has made, you know, they compare him to Thomas Sankara in terms of fighting for the freedom of that country, particularly the mineral resources of Burkina Faso, using them to the benefit of the people. So it seems as if the PR and the communication strategy did work, because now people understand what he wants to do in that country. But the issue here is, when are we going to see the continental body perhaps reaching out to these three countries to try and start a process where they can have elections and bring them back to the continental body? As you know, that this is one question. When this started, these three countries, the former South African president at some point in time visited Guinea-Conakry, where he spoke to the current leader who came into power by coup, and also then posed a question that we must ask ourselves as the continent why these young generals have taken this decision. And when you look at their countries, you can see that the nation was restless, and therefore that is why the coup became an option to some of these countries. But you have to deal with the issue of removal of leaders with military capability, which is something that the AU doesn't agree to. But if that happens, according to the AU Charter, you then have to start a process to bring them back.
Yeah, and in the case of Burkina Faso, that process was meant to be, that transition was meant to be 21 months, but it's since been extended to 2029, if I'm not mistaken, that Ibrahim Traore is to remain in office. But no doubt, Sophie, from the scenes we are seeing, I saw earlier on there were reports of people, Burkinabe, sleeping on the streets around the home of Ibrahim Traore. No doubt that his message, at least the message against imperialism, modern day imperialism, is resonating.
Well, I think when you look at the African continent and the world in general, capitalism has failed, and people are angry and people are restless. And therefore, when you come with other options, forms of government, people will think that they are better off, and they can support you. And therefore, that is why his message is resonating with many people in Burkina Faso. Because for many years, since its independence, look at the country. It is not developed, but it has got mineral resources. The same with Mali. It has got mineral resources, but the country is poor. You look at Guinea-Conakry, you look at Niger, you have a similar situation, and the former colonizers still controlling those regions, particularly the former Francophone countries. That's where you see this problem, not only those countries, but many countries on the continent. But the young generation is very restless, and they feel that, yes, we are free from colonialism, we are free from apartheid, but we are not benefiting. And therefore, whoever comes with promises, clearly he will get support.
Right.
And that is why the former president is saying, let's interrogate the reasons that leads to a situation where you breed an environment that is acceptable in relation to the coups.
Right. Sophie, let's move to another region, to the Great Lakes. Talk to me about Rwanda and the DRC, the peace agreement and peace process there, as well as the long and arduous journey that the SANDF, as part of the summit DRC, are going to take to be brought back home.
Well, we saw a statement that DRC and Rwanda will sign an agreement, a peace agreement. You would recall that the Foreign Affairs Minister of Rwanda and of the DRC met in Washington, where they engaged with the Americans being involved in facilitating the talks, which is quite sad because the slogan, African problem, African solution, was thrown out of the window by both DRC and Rwanda in this case, because you had processes that were being led on the continent by different leaders, but they didn't even want to go and meet. Some of them stayed away, they didn't attend those meetings. But all of a sudden, when America is calling them to Washington, they all run to Washington. And therefore, the question is, much as they have done that, the M23 was not invited. You have Rwanda and DRC officials meeting, but the M23 was not there. And it's shocking because the very same President Paul Kagame said he is being accused of supporting M23. But the reality is the M23 group has got genuine grievances because they are Congolese and they must be involved in the peace process, be included as the citizens of that country. All of a sudden, now there's this agreement between Rwanda and the DRC. Now you ask a question, how will that be a solution to the rebels, and there are many in the DRC?
Yeah.
Will that stop the conflict? In terms of South Africa, the soldiers are coming back home. They're coming back in different drips and drabs, but many have already arrived. Tomorrow there's a media briefing by the Department of Defense Force. We will hear how many have been brought back home, but we know that some are still back there, those who were part of MONUSC, not semi-DRC, and therefore the withdrawal has happened and they were able to take some of the military, but we'll get better information tomorrow when the Defense Force is addressing the media tomorrow.
Yeah. I was looking through the distances to be covered from Goma to Chato in Tanzania. It is quite significant, over 500 kilometers, most of it through the territory of Rwanda, and that being an operation, it's not as simple.
And you ask yourself,
yeah.
The last time we spoke about Rwanda and South Africa, it was when there was that exchange between President Kagame and President Ramaphosa. Now the question is, have they been able to resolve that standoff? As we saw the troops, you are correct, using Rwanda border.
So let's talk then about an issue that sort of fell off the radar somewhat, unfortunately. The International Court of Justice hearings on Israel and the United Nations matter.
Quite important, because here you'd recall that the United Nations appointed a committee led by Judge Navi Pillay, a South African, to look at the settlement of Israel in the territory of the Palestinians, whether it's a violation of the international law. And the committee came back to say, yes, it's in violation of international law. And then the General Assembly took a decision to take this matter to the International Criminal Court to seek an advice. The advice came, they agreed that it's in violation of international law. And now recently you saw the attack on UNRWA. And therefore, the UN again complaining that while it's expected to assist in areas such as this, they are being attacked. So those hearings included that, and we saw many countries supporting the notion that Israel is in violation of the international law with settlement and depriving Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, to get the humanitarian assistance. And therefore, you also had countries such as the United States of America supporting Israel and other countries. And therefore, we are waiting for the delivery of the ruling by the International Court of Justice on this matter.
Lastly, Sophie, talk to me about Ukraine and Russia. There have been moments where it seemed that there was a pathway towards a truce, even if it's temporary, but it seems to be elusive. You were reporting recently about the maneuvers and involvement of South Africa, the meetings between Donald Trump and the Ukrainian president during the Pope's funeral. Where do we stand, though, in terms of trying to achieve peace there?
One step forward, 10 steps back. This morning I saw a message from the president of Ukraine talking about he can't guarantee safety of leaders who will be attending the Victory Day in Moscow soon. That speaks to the hostility. We saw also the fact that Ukraine and America have agreed on that program of an agreement as it relates to the minerals of that country. So it looks like the two countries are almost done with that agreement. But we also saw America saying that they will pull out as mediators because both countries are not willing to agree on a way forward. Many people were saying America is already pulling back. We saw those reports, and all of a sudden we saw the spokesperson denying that. So that speaks to how complicated this matter is, and therefore sometimes there's hope, all of a sudden there's darkness again, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel because of back and forth. So as we speak, you still have that situation where there's still tension. Fighting is continuing with Russia launching heavy attacks, including in Kyiv, and also, on the other hand, Ukraine hitting back. And as I indicated, for me, when I saw Zelensky talking about not giving guarantees that during the victory parade or that event in Russia, the security of the leaders who have been invited, amongst them the president of Brazil, including the president of China, they can't guarantee that nothing will happen on that day. That speaks to hostility. And I can tell you, before end of the day, Putin is going to respond to that kind of a statement.
Yeah. All right, Sophie, thank you for that. That's Sophie Mokoena, SABC News international editor, leading a team that's really keeping track of all developments on the African continent and elsewhere in the world. As soon as things move that move the needle in that regard, you can count on us, Sophie, and the team.